My name is Barb Perin, and I work at the University of Colorado at Boulder. I raise money for the College of Arts and Sciences, the graduate school, and the institutes, especially in the sciences, earth sciences being one of them. I raise money for the College of Arts and Sciences, the graduate school, and the institutes, especially in the sciences, earth sciences being one of them. I worked, 13 years.
And what work were you doing with the TI 4100 in terms of research, testing, training, or other?
Well, I was part of the scientific support team, and the work I did, I started out processing data, teaching people how to use the data processing software packages, writing some graphical software to display the data, and supporting Judah Levine at CU Boulder in archiving the data. And then I moved over to do field work and became one of the field engineers to collect the data. Later on I moved into a management role, but I think by that time we had moved on to other more modern, more developed GPS receivers.
Okay. And in terms of the software, was there any kind of a computer in the TI 4100, or did you just get like raw data and have to build software at UNAVCO?
Is this processing software?
Yeah.
I think if I remember correctly, the data processing packages were developed at, I'm trying to think now, not Jet Propulsion Lab. There were two packages we used. Chris Roken worked with Bern, Switzerland to bring that data processing package, and there was another processing package used by the Jet Propulsion Lab. And so we took those data processing packages, and my role was to train people on using it and process the data from it. I did write early on one graphical display tool, but I think that's all I remember as far as developing the software. I was really a support team member.
And where did you use the instrument?
Oh gosh, so we did a lot of training here locally, and then the field projects that I remember, I did a lot of work in the Southwest Pacific. I went there a couple of times. Trying to remember where else I used that receiver, but in the Southwest Pacific I went to the island of Tanna, which was a really interesting place in the country of Vanuatu. Rarotonga, which is an island and is part of, I believe it's connected with New Zealand in some way. And I've done a number of field projects, and I have to admit, I can't remember every place I used which receiver.
And why did people want to go to Tanna and Rarotonga? I mean, what was the research?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember Mike's last name, the scientist whose project this was. Really,
Mike Beavis?
Mike Beavis and Fred Taylor.
Probably,
yeah, the scientists I was working, the reason that we wanted to use this receiver in the Southwest Pacific is because the scientists I was supporting their research, they wanted to make the first direct measurements of how plate tectonics were moving. So we went to all of these different islands so we could measure how the plates were moving in that part of the world. If I remember correctly, we had people on several islands in the country of Vanuatu. We had some in New Zealand, we had some on other islands in the Southwest Pacific like Rarotonga, Western Samoa. Those are what I remember. I'm sure Tonga was another one.
And when you got there, what did the people think of you and your instruments?
When I got to Vanuatu, it's a very interesting country because the country capital, the country itself was once run by both the country of France and Britain. And so England and France had made their imprint on the country. You could go into this Melanesian country and get a very nice croissant and cup of coffee, and then go out to the island of Tanna where I saw women in grass skirts and no tops. And so the people on the island of Tanna were really fascinated, and especially fascinated because they had come through World War II where there was a huge American imprint with a lot of modern, at that time, mechanical things that came in, and they had developed a religion called the John Frum Society. So bringing the GPS receiver there really, I'm sure, got some interesting reactions from some of the people that I worked with. And we were measuring around the volcano. No, we measured on the beach, but we did go over to the side where there was an active volcano. So it was a very interesting mix of modern culture to more developing culture. And so we got the whole breadth of reactions.
Had you ever used an instrument or technique like this before?
No, I came out of the world, well, I should say I came out of the the kind of instruments that I'd used in the past were really related originally to desktop computers because I'm a geophysicist trained in seismology. So I was analyzing the waveforms of earthquakes. So collecting data in the field was new to me, which began with my time at UNAVCO. However, the computer portion of it was familiar because all the computers were developing during the time as the electronics were developing. And the software was very familiar in the sense that I was used to working with a lot of scientific software.
Okay. Who trained you to use the instrument, and what was the most difficult part of training?
When I came in to use the TI 4100, James Stowell, I believe, was the person who trained me on using both the instrument and setting it up correctly. And I think doing the setup of the tripod for me was the bigger challenge because I was very comfortable with technology and scientific software.
And what was the most difficult part about using the instrument in the field?
Probably the most challenging part, both for me and many of my male colleagues, was moving the box around because, as I remember, the box with the receiver was about 90 pounds and maybe the box with the antenna was 50 to 70 pounds. So we all either got fit or back problems or both.
Because you had to like move it, like one person had to move it?
Oftentimes we were the person in the field alone, oftentimes moving it around to the specific site. So I think a lot of us came away, as I said, stronger and maybe with a little sore back. So it was really interesting times.
So when you were in the field, you were actually alone? There wasn't like groups of you?
For some observations in the field, when we got to the site, we'd manage that site alone. So we'd come as a team to a central field site and then and then travel out to the remote sites, especially if we, for example, in the country of Vanuatu, where we fanned out to different islands. So there'd be one of us working with a local scientific expert or guide on that island who was hired to help support us.
So were there many geoscientists on Vanuatu?
I do remember working with one on Tanna who came out of the central office. My guess, in thinking back in my memory, the person I worked with on Vanuatu was probably a local geodesist and maybe surveyor, and maybe they had someone doing surveying. Or someone, I remember on the island of Rarotonga, we worked with the New Zealand office that handled all the weather and all of that, and they provided someone to support us. They managed all the support function.
Because I would assume modern geodesy with GPS and land surveying with GPS was still very new when you brought these instruments out to these islands.
I think GPS was a new technique brought into surveying on those islands when I started working at that time. And I'm trying to remember if I used these receivers in China as well, but I'll stay with the Southwest Pacific because I remember it more clearly. However, a lot of it to them was very familiar. The setup of the tripod and the antenna, they were very familiar with setting an instrument very precisely. So the physical setup of that part of it was they were comfortable with. And then they're great people to work with, so it was just showing them the steps to use the receiver.
What was the most exciting part about using the instrument?
The most exciting part about using a GPS receiver, and it might not have been the TI 4100, but I'll start there and refresh my memory back to the TI 4100, was when I was on the island of Rarotonga and a hurricane was coming through nearby, and making the decision of risking having it blow away or taking it down and missing a day of data. So I'm a bit conservative, so I took it down because the tent poles were about ready to snap, and retreated to safer grounds. But for the TI 4100 itself, probably again Tanna sticks in my mind in Vanuatu because just working in the contrast of working with this very modern technology, collecting exciting science or data that was going to tell us some new things about science or confirm our understandings. At the same time, I'm working with a whole breadth of people, from people who were still very developing in their culture and didn't have a lot of modern technology, to people who are familiar with this sophisticated technology was really great.
And then you've sort of answered this, but what was the biggest benefit of using the instrument? Maybe you can go to the benefit to research and then the benefit to society.
Well, I think the biggest benefit of using GPS technology is science moves forward when it really has the proof to show that what it believes is the theory of how the Earth works around it for Earth science is proven by data. And this was the first direct collection of data showing how the plates moved. And what an exciting time for me and for others during that time just to confirm our understanding of how plate tectonics really worked, because I grew up in a time when that really was still a theory and they had a series of different data sets coming together, and this was a way to prove, yes, the plates were moving, take those very precise measurements and understand it. And then over time it's evolved out to help predict for natural disasters like earthquakes and really understand more and more and more as time goes on and refine the data. And as the computers get cheaper, the electronics get cheaper, so the instruments got much cheaper, we can put more out and realize and really measure and understand how the Earth is moving and what is the risk to people living near natural hazards like seismic zones.
Did you leave your mark on the instrument?
Did I leave my mark on the instrument? Well, what an interesting question. I would like to think that I did a good job and helped bring people into using this instrument, and maybe during that time showing that women are out in the field doing stuff and it's not a big deal and we all do it. And I'm kind of a taller woman than maybe the average woman, so I could physically move things around too. So I think very easily in some cases. So I think that I hope helped show and open the door, although I worked with many fabulous women scientists, so I wouldn't claim to be the one leading the way, just supporting them as they move forward to show that part of how women can get out there and do all the work that's needed to be scientists. I have a master's degree in science, so I'm very excited to bring that to bear on this. The mark it made on me, well, I had back surgery at some point, so as I mentioned earlier, that might be it. But I really think for me personally, it gave me the pathway to expanding my career professionally, working with a fabulous group of people here at UNAVCO, and also the many scientists, and be able to support them in their work so they could focus on the science. It's really a valuable piece of the whole team, to be that part of the team that handles the logistics, makes it smooth, everything works well, and the millions of dollars that the government is investing in scientific research is spent well. And so I really felt proud of being able to be a part of that. And the receiver was an expensive piece of equipment, very few of them initially. So those few TI 4100s, I was proud to be someone who was able to help the scientists use those effectively.
And did the instrument leave a mark on you?
Well, I guess what I said earlier, it gave me the opportunity to really get out there and do what I love, which is work with the science in a way that I could really make a difference by supporting the scientists collecting their information. So I think this opportunity working with this receiver at the time with the organization, with UNAVCO, changed my life, because I remember as a young student in geology looking at a picture of some river terraces in New Zealand and thinking, I want to go stand there. Or when I went to Garden of the Gods in Colorado and touching, oh, here's where 180 million years of erosion occurred, and so these two rocks are that different in time. And so that sort of impact on me as a young student, and then to see this receiver collecting that data and showing plate tectonics, it was exciting times.
Do you have a fond memory about the instrument you'd like to share?
Do I have a fond memory about the instrument? I think probably some of my fondest memories with the instrument is a little bit more general than one specific, as I think I really worked with a great group of people in the early days of UNAVCO, really trying to understand and learning a lot from several people there on how to manage field projects effectively with developing technology that required batteries, something very low tech. And you have to keep those batteries, keep the charge going, to the very high tech of making sure the electronics worked and how do you handle it when it doesn't, doing some repairs, or simply programming the computer, which now every toddler wants a cell phone. But in the day, that was a lot of technology that a lot of people were unfamiliar with. So I think the overall impression of working on a team to move something forward at a time like that was really a general fond memory for me.
So you mentioned communications and cell phones. So how did you communicate with others when you were on the remote islands? I mean, did you have to communicate about the instrument and about when you were taking data? Or?
That's a good question. How did we communicate with others? I remember that there was talk about satellite cell phones, but I don't believe I used those at any time. I imagine we were really, as I remember, the communication we had was done back in the office after the day to call someone. But I'm afraid my memory's not perfectly clear on that. It really was trying to be able to handle that field site yourself. And I think that was one of the strengths of UNAVCO in supporting the TI 4100, because the training and the way we designed the training and it was conducted, I think it was really done well. And the person who designed it, and I believe that was James Stowell, really did a good job in teaching us and helping us set that up.
Do you have any other comments about the instrument or the history that you'd like to share?
The only other things, maybe just kind of random comments about the TI 4100, is it was really fun to work with young technology, particularly then as a young scientist or young science support person. Being a support staff, it wasn't for me just about the science, although I really was excited about the science and scientists because of my background in science. But also, as a support person, I was very excited to bring in that level and quality of support and work with the technology. I'm a little bit of a geek, so I just loved the idea of doing this job well, learning the technology, moving it along, and helping us understand something about the Earth.